yourself. Psalm 27, that if God be for you, no weapon formed against you shall be able to prosper. You've got to talk to yourself. You've got to tell yourself that the Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? You've got to tell yourself that I believe. Oh, come on, somebody. I believe God will be on time. I believe I'm better in this situation.
We must be in the will of God and allow the Holy Spirit to lead. And then I've also have to listen to where people are. And one of the things that informs my preaching is when I talk to members and talk to people and I see what's going on, that informs the ministry itself. There's a word from the Lord. Romans chapter 8. Verses 36 through 39. As it is written, for thy sake we are killed all the day long. We are accounted as sheep for the slaughter. Nay, in all these things, we are more than conquerors through him that loved us. For I am persuaded that neither death nor life, nor angels, nor principalities, nor powers, nor things present, nor things to come, nor height, nor depth, nor any other creature shall be able to separate us from the love of God which is in Christ Jesus our Lord. Our subject today, wounded but determined. Wounded but determined. One of the facts of life that we all must be able to recognize, and that is there is some woundedness in all of us. When one is physically wounded, it is not hard to see where the wound is. But it's very hard to know the depth of woundedness below the level that we can see, below the conscious level. These are called emotional needs, emotional wounded. Amen. And most of the wounds that we suffered while we were little children, for some, it's been hard for them to live their lives successfully without remembering the pain that they suffered as little children. Psychologists tell us that the most important time in a child's life are those formative years. They put it this way: one's majority worldview is formed by the time one gets between 5 and 12 years old. They are 90% formed. This means that the way that you see things is flavored by the experiences that you had in your early days. For an example, if you never felt secure as a baby, if nobody ever were able to convince you that you were worth feeling secure, chances are you tend to exhibit the symptoms of being insecure when you're grown. That's why you hear people say those who are filled with jealousy are insecure people. Amen. People with insecurity, it's hard for them to trust anyone. And then if the authority figure in your life, whether it was your mother or your father, walked out of your life and you saw the agony that your mother or father went through, you always wanted mama or daddy to come back home. And if they never did, amen, you started feeling afraid of being abandoned because the one that you loved so much left you. And yes, if many of us suffered from the unfortunate deaths of somebody we needed so much, you have the fear of abandonment. And that causes us sometimes to either cling to people or try not to get emotionally involved with them, because you feel like if you do, you will end up being abandoned anyhow. And some of us are so protective of our feelings. Amen. And you act that out in your adult life. These different negative emotions could cause you much pain in your relationships, because you can be hard to get along with because you really don't trust anybody. What has happened is that you have been reaching and reacting to the emotional wounds that you received as a child. And today, you're operating on wounded emotions. Not to mention, and I think I better throw this in this time, children who are sexually molested before they get grown, and some afterwards. Unless they have someone to help lead them out of that pain, they will be emotionally wounded throughout their lives. Amen. And some people never heal. And they become victims of their own fears. I wondered almost 2 years ago when those children were trying to get into the United States to feel safe. They had been told that in America you could be safe. But when they got to the borders of the United States, babies were snatched out of their mother's arms. And here, almost 2 years later, some have never seen their mother again. I wondered how inhuman can we be to treat a child like that who doesn't even know where the parents are. It brought a pain in my heart. And one of the most revealing things about Job in the Bible, he revealed something within him that nobody knew. Everybody thought that since Job was the richest man around, everybody thought that things must be well in his life. But when Satan tempted Job, and Job lost everything that he had, he said in chapter number 3, the thing that I feared the most is come upon me. There must have been in him all kinds of fear that nobody knew about. But in that verse was a negative confession. And that negative confession was, I always thought it would end up this way. Some of you right now are in relationships that you've never felt safe in. I wish somebody would say amen. And if you're not careful, it's going to take you and the Lord to heal these wounded emotions. Amen. Because I would not want you to end up like Job. I suggest that Job was holding on to some emotional stuff that he did not realize. But that hard time brought it to the light. And then there was another man, young man in the Old Testament, whose name was Jacob. He was a part of a set of twins. The Jewish law had it that the oldest son in the family would receive double the inheritance of the other siblings. And because he was born a few seconds after his twin brother Esau, I suggest that he always felt like he was in the shadow of his brother, because essentially they were born really together. And yet, because one is a few minutes older than another, he got all of the good things. The focus was always on him and no focus on Jacob. I wonder, how did he feel? Same age, same day. But one is favored over the other. And we talk a lot about how he was trickery. He was a trickster. Sometimes conditions will breed us to begin to fight for ourselves in ways that are not good. Amen. And if that were not enough, Jacob's mother, Rebekah, she favored him over Esau. So she schemed to get him to get the blessing that his brother was supposed to get. I wish I had time to tell you that story. That's another one. But when Esau saw that his mother and Jacob had schemed to rob him of his inheritance, he became so angry that he pledged that he would kill Jacob. Amen. And now, his mother sends him to live with Uncle Laban because she didn't want him to be killed. I submit. The fact was that not only was Esau angry and hurt, but Jacob had to be a wounded man too. It was not visible on the outside, but it constantly bothered him day after day. Amen. There are some of you, if you will admit it, there are some things that hurt you as a child, and you are still wounded. I know the Lord told me to tell you this today, and that is that can be help for you if you really want to be healed. But I've learned some people, they love to be pitied, and they're always throwing pity parties. And when you say to them, you've got to help yourself, oh, nobody understands what I've been through. Come on, somebody. But I want you to know that the God that we serve, who knew and who knows all you have been through, if you are willing, God can perform a healing of your wounded emotions. God had planned for Jacob some beautiful things in the future. And God did not stop wanting to help him even when he had been wrong. Aren't you glad that the Lord knows all about us? And that God looks beyond our faults and see what we can become? Preach right. But that wound was so deep in his heart that he could not live with himself. Even though he had become prosperous, that wound was still there. You know, I don't care how rich you might become or how powerful you might become, how well known you might become, none of that stuff can heal a wounded spirit. Amen. And deep within himself, he knew that one day he had to face his brother and the things that he had done. He couldn't rest. And it was that wounded spirit that drove him to try and make peace with Esau. Now, you know what some of us will do? Some of us, when we are hurting and we know it's not solved, we cover it up by a self-defense mechanism called repression. Have you ever said something like this? I'm through with it. Ain't gonna bring it up no more. I'm through. And you think because you said that it works. But what you've done is you've used a self-defense mechanism called repression. Everybody say repression. What that is, it is when you banish something from your conscious mind and you bury it in your subconscious mind. Let me tell you about the subconscious mind. If you ever seen an iceberg in the water, it's 9/10 submerged and only 1/10 visible. Amen. Now, that's the way your mind is. But your subconscious mind cannot think for itself. And it only conforms to what you feed in. And then when it gets full, it turns around and controls your conscious mind. Now, you buried it. You said you were through with it. But one day you are looking at a television program and it touches your pain and it brings back all of those things that you buried years ago. And sometimes you start crying uncontrollably. Or sometimes you can look at somebody and they remind you of somebody who hurt you, and it all comes back. Preach, white. What has happened is that you didn't bury it. It was unresolved pain. Amen. And sooner or later, it will come rushing back. And now, you feel worse than you did in the first place. What does that prove? It proves that you are still wounded. Amen. And in most of us, there is one or two events that signals a turning point. Sometimes it's a good turning point, and we call that Kairos moment. When that young woman at the inauguration, that was a Kairos moment for her, because watch it now, she's going to skyrocket. But there are others who some of these incidents are so devastating that they are hard to get over. That argument with the one you love that separated you. An automobile accident that has rendered you helpless to do what you wanted to do in life. And now you got to suffer the rest of your life. An operation that went wrong in the hospital and can't be reversed. Or that traumatic experience, being carjacked, come in your house one day and thieves have been in and ransacked everything, and now the personal you has been exposed. And you get to the point you can say, I know I will never be the same. I hope today that I can bring you some hope. I hope that if you listen to this message and take it to heart, that you will begin to look at what happened to you through a different light. And some of us wonder, why did God let me go through all of this pain? And because many of us have become so bitter, you have never looked at it as if it were a blessing in disguise. Amen. I used to know a police officer who had an accident trying to do his job, and it paralyzed him for the rest of his life. I used to try to imagine what he felt like, especially when it wasn't his fault. I've come to understand that those people whose lives have been abruptly changed and they are wounded, that it doesn't have to end that way. What it will take is for you to view that experience from a different light. I told the church this morning of the real story of a prostitute. She was a lovely woman. She sold her body and started looking old while she was young. And while she was grieving about her situation, she saw some more beautiful young women selling their bodies. And she began to walk the street. And every time she saw a young woman selling her body, now she understood that the result of what she had done was now a calling from God to try and prevent somebody else from ending up like she did. She began to use her woundedness to help somebody else. And I guess I have to be transparent again. When the Lord called me to preach, and I had a broken home, I couldn't understand why God would call me to preach. And then I go through domestic problems. I was ashamed. I used to think when people join the church, I said, Lord, don't let them know what I've been through. They might not come back. You know, you always got some over-religious folk. I heard a woman say one day, he's such a good man. I know he can't go see the Lord because he got more than one wife. Back then, that hurt me so badly that sometimes I would leave church with a broken heart. And I said, Lord, why did you let this come on me? And the Lord began to talk to me. He began to say, you don't know who's married and who's not. Just because somebody said I do doesn't make them married in my sight. I said, say on, God, say on. And God began to show me that even when you have had domestic problems, he doesn't put you out the family. Amen. Then he showed me that people who never been through what you've been through can't be a true witness to somebody who's going through that. I let you go through that so you can preach to somebody else who's been through that. And I remember a few years ago, I was over in Mississippi in revival. And while I was there, they were having I guess a Sunday school convention or some kind of group where the churches came together. And there was a young man there that fixed his eyes on me. And he followed me all day long. So by the evening time, I was getting a little tired of him. I said, you got a problem? He said, yes, I can tell, I can talk to you. I said, what's your problem? He said, I was a church deacon. And in that church, if you ever got a divorce or if you were single, you could never be on the board again. And they put me off the board because my wife left me for somebody else. I said, you still love her? He said, yeah. I said, you go get her. He said, no, she's married again. I said, in other words, you ain't never going to be on that board no more. But what I had to do was to show him that even when man might reject you, God still has room for you. And you might not ever get back on that board, but you'll do good on somebody's board. Can I get a witness here, somebody? Then I knew what God was saying to me. The same way I liberated you, you can liberate somebody else. And I can stand and tell you today, I'm a better preacher because now I'm not afraid to tell them, yes, I've had some shipwreck. But thanks be to God. God can set you back up straight. Oh, I wish I had a witness. So he told me to tell you today, if if you are emotionally wounded, you can still be objective. Come on, somebody. And you can still be determined. I was emotionally bankrupt, but I was still determined. Because when I read what the text says, it said, we as children of God, and this was in the formative time of the church, if you admitted that you were a child of God and that Jesus was your Savior, you could be killed. But Paul says, as it is written, for thy sake we are killed all the day long. We are accounted as sheep for the slaughter. But he says, nay, in all these things, we are more than conquerors through him that loved us. That ought to let you know, whatever is in your past, you've never thought that you could conquer it. But he says, if you are determined to reach your goal, you are more than a conqueror through him. He talking about the Lord who loves you so. What he was saying, if you have made up your mind, you're going to follow the Lord regardless to what happened to you. Go on and conquer what is before you. Why? Because if you love the Lord already loves you. Can I get a witness here? And God will give you the victory. I feel better right now. And then he said, I am determined, whether death nor life, powers or principalities, things present or things to come, I'll let nothing separate me from the love of God. Somebody listening to me today, you've been feeling like giving up. But what the Lord is saying, if you're determined to hold on, he will walk with you. He will talk with you. He will bind up a broken heart. And you might ask me today, how do you know can tell you, I came to Jesus just like a was, weary, wounded, and I was sad. But I found in him a resting place, and he has made me glad. And I can stand and tell you today, you may be wounded, but be determined that when God is with me, he's more than the world against me. And I'm glad I got the Lord on my side. I know it ain't but a few of us in here, but is there anybody in here who made up your mind? I got the Lord on my side, and I ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. You ought to praise him right now. Tell him thank you. He's able to turn your life around. Yeah, Lord. And I can tell the world I found in him a resting place. That means when I get burdened, tell the Lord about it. When I get upset, tell the Lord about it. He will. Won't he take care of your enemy? Won't the Lord stand up on your behalf? He will heal that wounded spirit. He will make you a brand new person. And now I'm better than I've ever been in my life. Not because I haven't made mistakes, but I still make mistakes. But thanks be to God for his amazing grace. For he has shown me that when you make mistakes, I don't put you out the family. You might have to pay for it, but I don't put you out the family. So now when I get burdened down, when I feel like giving up, the Lord reminds me, you said you would let nothing separate you from my love. Isn't it good to know that God loves you?
When I rose this morning, I didn't have no doubt. Oh, I didn't have no doubt. When I rose this morning, I didn't have no doubt. I didn't have rose up early this morning. I didn't have no doubt. I didn't have no doubt. Oh, no. Hallelujah. Now, if you would go back a little place that used to be called Jones Avenue Church of God in Christ, they sing it like this. When I rose this morning, I didn't have no doubt. When I rose this morning, I didn't have no doubt. When I rose this morning, I didn't have no doubt.